Good morning, CLC. I invite each and every one of you now just to take a nice, deep, cleansing breath, allowing the love and light that surrounds us to fill your body. And as you release the breath, release all that no longer serves you. If you feel so inclined, go ahead and take another nice, deep, cleansing breath, breathing in all the love and light. And as you breathe out, allow your body to relax in this moment. And allow your mind to be here now. Universal love enfolds me. Universal wisdom inspires me. Universal spirit enlightens me. Universal power encircles me. I am one, and all is well. As we begin this inner healing process, let me invite you to relax in quiet confidence, opening yourself to the miracle-working higher power. Now symbolize the unity of your thinking and feeling nature by touching your chest with your hand, and let my words act as your own for your own inner healing, acceptance, and receptivity. I acknowledge that there is a power, intelligence, and wisdom greater than my own. I am in the midst of it, and it is in the midst of me, sensitive and responsive to my every thought, word, action, and feeling. I now make this true for myself by saying aloud, I acknowledge. Acknowledging this higher power working through my life, I admit that I am personally responsible for solving my own problems while being guided and assisted by something greater than myself. As I am ready to surrender the conflicts of my ego to the wisdom of this infinite presence, I simply speak these words. I surrender. Knowing that forgiveness is the key to unconditional love and the feeling of heaven, I now unconditionally forgive anyone and everyone who has ever injured me in any way, real or imagined. And I now forgive myself for all of my mistaken judgments and their resulting actions. From my deepest level of understanding, I now say, I forgive. Realizing that I continually experience the effects of my own thinking, I now choose to allow this higher power to recreate me deeply, filling my mind with thoughts that are only positive, constructive, loving, and beautiful. I call upon this divine inflow by stating aloud, I choose. Now I center upon that one special idea that I'm willing to accept as real for me in this coming week. Visualizing that idea as already acted upon and brought to pass. In seeing my idea become a fact of my experience, I enjoy the happiness and peace of my thought fulfilled and gratefully speak these words. I accept. knowing that I have an everlasting place in the midst of the power that sustains all creation, as well as the support of all those around me, I allow myself to relax in the peace of fulfillment and gratitude and say, I release. I release. Now, in my mind's eye, I envision the presence of someone near and dear to me. This can be a friend, a family member, a teacher or mentor, someone who has touched my life in deep and loving ways. Someone who may not be physically present in the room with me this morning. I turn toward that image in my mind's eye and say, I'm grateful for the good in your life. Now I open my eyes, turn to the world around me, and joyfully speak to anyone physically present in the room or virtually on this broadcast, and share in confidence and gratitude in saying, I'm grateful for the good in your lives.
Thank you for being here today on a hot holiday weekend Sunday as we begin a series on Ralph Waldo Emerson. But before doing so, however, I must acknowledge Reverend David Dewhurst for his talk last week, which I very much enjoyed, and I told him so, and I hope you'll tell him so too. And he gave us a taste of merry old England in that talk. Told us about London, and brought to mind the fact you go to England and you order fish and chips, and you get fish and wedge fries. Okay, and if you ask for what we think of as chips, they'll say, "Well, those are crisps." And he told us too that if you ask for candy, well, no, that's toffee. And if you ask for cookie, it's a biscuit. And if you ask for a biscuit, it's a scone. But you don't want to mop up cream gravy with a scone, let me tell you. Ew, nasty. It won't work. So we fought a war with these people for the right to name our own junk food. And that's what we're commemorating on Tuesday. Can you think back 27 years if you're, I don't know, in your 40s or older? It's not a very long time. It's what did that be, 1996? It's not a very long time. It was only 27 years after the Declaration of Independence that Ralph Waldo Emerson was born. 1803. This was a very new country. And he lived through most of the 19th century. He lived till 1882, which is 5 years before Ernest Holmes was born, who's the founder of this religious science teaching. And the reason that we're having a series, which I know you're all dying to ask, why we're having a series, why, on Ralph Waldo Emerson, is that he really provided the ethic that is New Thought, because New Thought, as it was forming in the 19th century, was principally about where mysticism meets healing. And if you weren't busy having a mystical experience or wanting to, and you weren't necessarily in need of a healing, there wasn't really much in it for you, and what Emerson gave us was practicality. What you can do within the confines of your own mind on an ordinary day and in society. How you can keep your wits about you in a spiritual way, in the noise of the crowd, the noise of the marketplace. And he was considered one of the great philosophers in American history, and he was considered in his own lifetime kind of a rock star. He wasn't, as most of you know, if you're regulars here, I'm a big fan of the esoteric and the obscure, and he was anything but, because he was really well known in his time. Presidents knew him. He, in fact, spoke at Lincoln's memorial service. He knew Brigham Young. He knew John Muir. He knew this one. He knew that one. This guy whose name I forget. And they're putting all kinds of stuff on Facebook for you as we go. There's some statements that I'll get to in the course of this talk. And I'm not going to give a big biographical run-up every week of the four, but I thought, you're here and let's do this. So a little biographical run-up. I love this story, and I can't think of the man's name because he's not well known, but there was this guy who in Boston was a printer, and then he decided to open his own print shop, very young. And then he decided, well, I've got all this printing equipment, why don't we publish a magazine here? So he put the word out that he wanted to publish a magazine. He was going to call it The Dial, D-I-A-L. And as he put the word out, some people expressed an interest, and so he said, well, let's all get together and have dinner at my house. And who showed up? 9 people, I think it was. Among them, Ralph Waldo Emerson, Nathaniel Hawthorne, James Russell Lowell. Okay. It's quite the crowd. All of them basically unknown at the time. And they formed this magazine, and it only made it 4 years, but it turned into something else, and then it turned into something else, and then it turned into the Atlantic Monthly. That is still published to this day, called The Atlantic, and Emerson was a co-founder of The Atlantic. So, and it's published, The Atlantic is now by something called the Emerson Collective. So his work is still resounding all these years later. I first encountered him when I was a kid in school, and there was a poem about by the rude bridge that arched the flood, the embattled farmers stood and fired the shot heard round the world. And I thought, oh, that's nice patriotic poetry. And I closed the book. You know, that was all there was to him. And it wasn't until I got acquainted with modern metaphysics in the New Thought canon that they reintroduced me to Emerson through his first and second series of essays, and I lost my mind, as some of you know, because we've had classes here on him over time. Okay, so why I'm bringing this to you is because it's good practical stuff, and today we start with his essay called Self Reliance. Self Reliance. He says, to believe your own thought is genius. To believe your own thought is... Have you been taught that to believe your own thought was genius? Most of us are taught that that's delusional. You know, that's, who do you think you are to have these big thoughts, much less believe them? He says, we see our own rejected thoughts, our own rejected genius coming back to us with a sort of alienated majesty. And that means the ideas that you pass on, like we've talked about before, you might not be a musician, but a whole symphony jumps into your head, and you bat it away, and you say, not unto me. I don't have the skill set for that. I don't know what to do with that. And the next thing, you hear it somewhere else. You hear it on the radio. You hear it from the stage someplace, you know? The poem, the couplet, the idea, the work of abstract art that comes into your mind, and you say, I'm not up to this challenge. Next thing you know, there it is. And then you're telling people, I had that idea first, and they're like, yeah, right. But you know you did. You know you did. There's a spiritual broadcasting station of esoteric information that's coming across our field of consciousness that we can snag. That's the technical term for it. We can snag this information and draw it down and bring it out in form. But we're timid. And Emerson says, I'm jumping around here with these Emerson quotes. I put them in an order, and it never comes out the same as I expect it to. So he says, God will not have his work made manifest by cowards. And much of the time, he laments And I think we'd agree, we're kind of cowardly. We're kind of timid about stuff. Oh, I don't know what people are going to think about this. Have you ever said that to yourself? What are people going to say? What are people going to say? He says we are afraid of truth, afraid of fortune, afraid of death, and afraid of each other. Afraid of each other. And he's writing this pre-Civil War era. Afraid of each other. We live in a space and time now where we tend to be afraid of each other. Mostly what we're afraid of is what's going on inside of us. It's like, what is this going to make me have to do? If I hand off my power to a supposed external deity, it's going to make me do less. I will have to break less of a sweat than if I am the architect of my own destiny through the management of my own mind. And we look uphill at that and we say, man, that's a lot of work. I just don't know. And we back down from it. And we have somebody like Emerson. What Emerson does, I had an aunt who, I was going to say she's not my mother. Obviously, she's not my mother. She's just my aunt. But she was the mother of my cousins. But she would, when they were teenagers, I was a little younger, she was a ferocious woman. And she had like a barbecue fork. If they slumped at the table, they got the barbecue fork. I'm not making this up. These guys are pushing 80 now, and they probably still are like at the dinner table kind of all like this. So I picture Emerson kind of, except he'd be gentler than that. He's not going to brutalize you, but he's going to point out, you have what it takes because you are what it takes. And when in this essay on self-reliance, he's speaking of being reliant on the self, it's the self with a capital S. See, he got a lot of grief for being an atheist, which he was not at all. He was a minister in the Unitarian Church for about 3 years, and then he'd had it up to here with organized religion, which he saw as, on the one hand, making people dependent on clergy, and on the other hand, trying to separate them from their money. And so and yet, here we are. And so he bailed on that. He became a writer and principally a lecturer, and he did quite well at it. And as I say, he became very well known as he went through his career. But he had this deep and abiding faith in a power resonant within what? Nature. And what is nature? Your nature. It's not just what's out in the garden. It's not just the great outdoors. It's your nature in nature. That the God of nature. He was called a deist. He was called a pantheist. He's really more of a panentheist if you're going to split hairs in that way. But he believed in this and in the power of prayer. In the power of prayer. In the power of prayer, you discover the fullness of the self. And you stand in your truth. You tell your truth. And you don't care what other people think as much as possible. I mean, if they employ you or they're married to you or something, yeah, then there's some negotiation and compromise necessary. But by and large, you stand in your own truth and you go to the God of your own understanding. And you create a faith bridge between yourself and that inner presence. And he told us in a later essay, actually, this is not in Self Reliance, but he says the faith that stands on authority is not faith. That's one of my favorite of all of his sayings. The faith that stands on authority is not faith. What is it then? It's authority. It's obedience to authority. But true faith is spontaneous. True faith, you go to the source of all wisdom within yourself. How do you do this? You get quiet, you turn within, and you listen, and you listen. And Emerson's ideas included that he felt, his personal opinion, but he put it in an essay, was that to go to this source with too many specific material requests is, in his words, vicious. You should pray to know yourself. You should pray to know your place in the grand scheme of things and to be a kinder and better person rather than pray to accumulate material wealth, material well-being. Well, we teach that here too. I think we're maturing, New Thought is really, because it's used from time to time, the hook of, hey, you can. I picture like we had barkers outside the door, so, hey, buddy, you want a new car? Okay, all you got to do is change your mind about it. You can. Here's your brand new. It's a game show. It's a game show, and sometimes there's the bait and switch. I love that. Like on what is it? The not The Price is Right. The one Monty Hall. What was that called? Where they had the 3 doors. Let's make a deal. Thank you. Let's make a deal. Or if she's bringing the box down the aisle or whatever, you know, and they'd say, well, you picked door number 3. Well, here's your year's supply of dog food. And you'll see that kind of shoulder. They don't even have a dog, you know, and their shoulders kind of sink. And this dog food you can put in a bowl on the floor in your brand new kitchen. Yeah. Right? And they kind of do this bait and switch sort of thing in a positive way. To understand the will of God, to understand the way of God, to understand the power of nature that's flowing through you is what is asked of us. And if we do that, we will be okay, and we will have what we need. And some people, you got to understand, he's saying this, and he became a very wealthy man. He made in a lecture season $2,000, and we're talking almost 200 years ago. Okay, so, you know, but it was quid pro quo. You know, it was for quality delivered. So some will have bigger ideas, inventions, patents, things like that, and more wealth will roll in. But that's not the point of life. Point of life is to be yourself. Because, he said, at the end of the essay, Self Reliance, he said, only yourself can bring you peace. Only the triumph of principles can bring you peace. A clear conscience is what he meant. A clear conscience. Have I done the best I could? Have I been fair in all my transactions? He talks about this in the essay Compensation, which we're not going to get to this month, except we just did. But you know, it's have I been fair in my dealings with my neighbors? Have I been fair in my dealings with my family? Then I have peace in my heart. This can bring me peace. He said, we love big causes, but what about what's right here? And I think about that too, because sometimes we do that. We're like, I want world peace, but I'm really irritated at you. You know, and you're here, and I'm not going to talk to you about it. I'm so fed up. I'm not going to. I'm just going to avoid. I'm just going to sit here quietly resenting, percolating away, little steam coming out my ears, you know, not going to deal with it. But I wish everyone else on this planet would just get along and put down their weapons and so on. That's not how it works. He was faithful in much, is faithful in least. It's I control myself. I control my own actions and reactions. I control my own consciousness. I can't make people half a world away or half a block away do what I want. But I can guide myself in a direction of doing what I want and what I know is best and what I know works. And making a record of that in my mind. And doing that repeatedly instead of, as you've heard the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. Well, this has never worked and this has never worked, but maybe this time. Maybe this time I can resent you and not suffer myself. Maybe the laws of cause and effect will yield because it's, you know, a supermoon tonight. It actually is. And so maybe there's magic in the air and everything, all of the systems there'll be this breach in the systems, and I can get away with something here in terms of cosmic law. But you know what? No, never. Never happens. Always we're guided back to the self. We would put this in modern terms: wherever I go, there I am. And then he tells us, and the guy was full of paradoxes too, you got to understand. He loved to travel. And then he wrote in his essays about you should never love to travel. And what he meant was, if you travel to get away from yourself, I love this expression. You know what he said you do? You bring ruins to ruins. Think about that a moment. So like you're in front of the Colosseum or something, and you're this guilty, kind of miserable self who's spent all this time and a lot of exertion in those days to get there. You didn't just hop Alitalia, They just went out of business, I think, or merged with somebody. But anyway, it was quite an ordeal to travel. And, and so there you are, kind of this rumpled mess in front of the ruins, and you're thinking, and I've escaped my past, by doing this. I've outrun consequences by doing this. No, there you stand. He said, do not require a description of the countries toward which you sail. Tomorrow you arrive there and know them by inhabiting them. I love that one too. So often we require a description of the countries toward which we sail. What's going to happen next? Practitioners, you know this when you've talked. Clients have come to you and they'll say, I'd like to manifest thus and such in my life. And you say, well, I'm very well. I'm going to take it into prayer. I'm going to take it into affirmative prayer. And they're like, well, what's going to happen? When's it going to happen? On what corner of the street is it going to happen? And you're like, I don't know. I don't know at all. Trust the process. Trust the process. All things are unfolding for good, and they involve a lot of people's choice fields beside the self. Just the simplest thing. You want a new job. That's going to involve somebody hiring you. They have a company or an outfit of some kind or other, and their ability to hire you is dependent on the kind of profit they're turning this quarter and blah, blah, blah. Stockholder returns, and all of these different pieces come together. You want a house, unless you're building it from the ground up, somebody's living in it right now. And you can't, or shouldn't anyway, boost them out of there to have a house. That's kind of wicked, isn't it? Plus, it'll turn around and bite you. Because then somebody, and this is actually, there's a pattern of this in the culture sometimes where everybody's moving everybody else out of the way to get to their good. And it's pretty ugly, and it doesn't work. It doesn't bring people the permanent peace of mind that they want. So we have to trust that there's a process at work here by which things are moving out of the unseen into the seen. Things are moving out of the unseen into the seen and the known and the felt. He says the power in us is new in nature, meaning new in the world. The power when you have an idea, it's never been had by anybody before in exactly the same way. And all things yield to it. And all things bring themselves to it. No idea, in other words, comes unaccompanied by the material necessary to flesh it out in form. Or to put that in another way, every idea that comes with baggage. Or if baggage has a negative connotation to you, like emotional baggage, think of it as luggage. Every idea, Samsonite. Every idea comes to you fully packed, fully formed, factory loaded. It doesn't show all of this all at once. Just like there are features in things, electronics and whatnot that you buy that you don't discover until you do. Whoa, I didn't know it would do that. Software and things, there's it's now AI and all. And so it doesn't tell its whole story all at once, but it's got a story and it brings you its story. He says, be a nonconformist. A foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds. Another favorite statement, the hobgoblin. I love the way the guy puts words together. You could have said anything there, you know, the bane of existence. No, the hobgoblin of living. What is a foolish consistency? It's the opposite of a wise one. A wise consistency is every time I do this, I feel better about myself. Every time I stand in this truth, something good happens to me. A foolish consistency, like I said, is, well, this has never worked, but maybe this time it will. And a foolish consistency in society is continuing to do, it's like putting out fires, which is an unfortunate metaphor at this time. Love to Canada, okay? Please. And all who suffer under the smoke. But it's like, all right, here's a better one, playing whack-a-mole. Problem, problem, you know, you slap all of these things down. And your life becomes about that. You've heard the expression, the one who is good with hammers, every problem is a nail. Yeah. And so you become about problem solving. And if there's, now here's where it gets weird. He didn't say this, but I'll say it. If you're really good at problem solving, or have been told that you are, have been trained to think that you're really good at problem solving, when there are no problems around to solve, you'll create one. You'll create a bunch of them. I'm very good at bringing peace to conflict. But it's the peaceful season now, and everyone's sitting around being peaceful, and it's kind of dull. You can hear the crickets, you know. So what am I going to do? Smack somebody. Pick a fight. Start something, you know, so as to be able to display my talent. That's a foolish consistency. How do we shake that off? We go to the nature of our own being. We say, show me who I am. Show me who I am and what I have to offer that's new and different. He says, if we live truly, we shall see truly. If we live truly, we shall see truly. This is the ultimate fact which we so quickly reach on this, as on every topic, the resolution of all into the ever-blessed one. Now, this kind of thinking really freaked people out. This is why they started calling him an atheist and stuff, is because he believed that the divine nature was fully present at every point within creation. He believed that the divine nature was fully present within every person, no matter how unrepentant they might be, no matter how recalcitrant they might be. The divine presence was fully orbed within them. In the ever-blessed one, all things recombine into the one. This bee that just stung me is part of the one. This flower that had just landed in this beautiful, sweet, aromatic thing is part of the one. My interacting with both, part of the one. One life, one presence, one power. And that's what the mystics know. And we characterize, just like Emerson got called an atheist, the mystics get called strange. Okay? Even antisocial. Because they're kind of, well, they won't gossip and they won't, you know, they won't play ball the way it seems like ordinary humans will. What are the mystics up to? The mystics see the oneness. They don't see it all the time. They see it in bursts. But when they see it, they acknowledge it. They recognize it. They recognize it like pictures from home. That's really what it is. They're looking into the heavenly estate. Okay? And then they come back into ordinary reality. That's what somebody like Emerson trained himself to do. He would walk among the hills and things, and he was walking as if in heaven. He was walking in this elevated state of joyous acceptance of what's so. I've got just a couple more lines for you here. And there are more. There are 5 or 6 that they're putting on Facebook. He said, prayer is the contemplation of the facts of life from the highest point of view. It is the soliloquy of a beholding and jubilant soul. contemplation of the facts of life from the highest point of view. What is that point of view? The point of view of unity, point of view of oneness. The point of view of unity, oneness, communicating itself in a certain way so that everything that occurs is information. So if I have a pain in my left big toe, it's information to me that there's something to look at. Possibly as simple as my shoes are too small. I need to go up a shoe size, I don't know why. Possibly some organic issue, possibly I keep stubbing my metaphorical toe against my metaphorical day, you know? It's like an impediment, an annoyance, something like this. I'll ask it. Why are doors being slammed in my face? Maybe it's because how I knock. I'll ask it. I'll ask this information. Why is my life working out the way that it is? What do I need to know? Instead of casting blame or thinking the whole thing's a big, deep, dark secret, I'll ask it. What do you want from me? What do you want me to know? That's interacting with nature in a healthy kind of way. And nature will tell you. Why? Because it wants your life to work. Because when you're, see, okay, I got to riff on this real quick and then get out the way. But we make a big deal about unconditional love, and sometimes it gets a little syrupy. Oh, God loves you and loves the bee kisses the meadow and, you know, all this kind of ick. And it's true. It's all true, but it's kind of, to look at it in another way, which doesn't rule out the first way, but to look at it another way. Love is functional. Love is expedient. Love moves things along. Nature loves you not just because you're all that. Nature loves you because you're an agent of nature. It's like a tree loves its leaves because they all deliver something, right? The tree loves its roots because they sink down and get water, not just because, oh, they're beautiful roots and they're so elegant and they're so symmetrical. No, they're functional too. So your life working and my life working, that is to say, having creative ideas, having the supply and the means and what have you, especially the human connections, to bring these forward in form, having all of that happen, is good for the whole system. That's why the whole system is so delighted to experience itself through you, because you're furthering it along. And the only thing that can gum up the works at all, which really in the big picture can't, because this thing is bigger than our ability to impede it, but what can certainly affect us at the local, private level is our fear and our sense of separation, which we then turn around and project onto each other, which makes us afraid of each other and afraid of the future and afraid of change and afraid of risk and afraid of this whole long list of things. So the answer to that, he would say, is get out in nature, you know, and go into nature. Go into your own nature. Love yourself just the way you are. Like a song we sometimes sing here. Love yourself the way you are, and still you choose to grow. And still you choose to grow. Not love yourself the way you are, but still you choose to grow, because if you put but in a sentence, it invalidates everything came before it, right? That's a metaphysical grammar hack I just gave you there. But I love myself the way I am, and still I choose to grow. So next week, some more Emerson for you. We have 3 volumes of his first and second series of essays in the bookstore. He's all over Amazon and all the online retailers, and you can get PDFs because all his stuff is in the public domain now because it was so long ago. And he's got many other, but outside of those 2 series of essays, he's got many other essays. He's got journals. I think there's a I have some of his journals, but I don't have the 16-volume thing Harvard came out with. I have some of his letters, but not all of his letters. And I tell you what, folks, if he had recipe for split pea soup, I'd buy that, because I just love his work, and I hope you do too, and especially I hope you find comfort and grace in it. So let's know together now, there is one life, one power, one presence everywhere, radiant, everywhere manifesting, beaming down sunlight on us, aplenty, here where we stand on the Gulf Coast. And I affirm and know that a natural balancing is taking place across our planet, where fires that don't need to be lit or burning themselves out are being doused, and weather patterns are adjusting themselves, and humans are participating in this and cooperating with this by making wise and beautiful choices in what they do and how they do it. And I affirm and know that the center of all of this spinning activity, there's an intelligence and a purposefulness and a joy accessible to each one of us. And I claim now that each of us in this coming week finds a greater awareness of it, greater experience of it than ever before. For this knowing and its manifestation in form everywhere we turn, I am so deeply grateful. I let it be so, and so it is.
You again. And everyone else, welcome back. We love the fact that you are here, and we love the fact that you came to share your time, your energy, your support, the fact that you chose to be with us. We also truly appreciate the fact that you are sharing your finances and your monetary donations with us. We know that you have many options. We hope that we service you in all the ways that you need servicing, and we thank you for sharing your love and support. And with that, I invite you now to say with me, divine love through me blesses and multiplies all the good I am and have, all the good I give and receive. I am prosperous now, and so it is.
I'm a little discombobulated today, so, and I couldn't even tell you why. It just is what it is, right? So there's a couple of things going on. One, there are wildflowers. That's not what I intended to say, but that's what I said. Wildfires still happening in Canada, so we want to wrap our treatments around the firefighters and the communities being involved, including much of the Midwest, which is dealing with the smoke. You know, borders don't stop smoke, so those people, we want to wrap our treatment arms around that. And there's a birthday coming up, kind of a big one on Tuesday. And whatever else is going on, we would like to wrap our treatment arms around this country. And while we get into the celebration of this birthday, remember the promise. Remember the promise of this birthday. So, I don't know where I'm going to go in treatment, but those are the two things that I would like you to wrap your treatment arms around as I open my mouth and see what God has to say. So join me in knowing that there is one power, one presence, one life, one love. And each one of us are the moving parts of that love. That love flows through us into this world and does amazing things. We live that life. We are that presence. And so as we wrap our arms around each other, we are knowing for the firefighters safety and good weather conditions. And for the people in the Midwest, cool breezes to move that smoke along. And for those of us here under the heat dome, cool breezes and a little bit of rain, so we can break this heat and move on. And for this country, as we come up on our birthday, we won't mention how many birthdays it's been. I'm knowing peace. I'm knowing prosperity. I'm knowing getting to know each other. I'm knowing the wonderful neighborhood mentality where we shake hands with each other, we smile, we wave, and that we do that all across this amazing land. That we remember the promise of that first birthday and what dreams they had and the dreams that we're still working on and how they have evolved and changed and become so inclusive, that we hold that energy as we go forward. So as I say happy birthday to the United States and to all its people, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the dream. And I'm grateful for all of the work that we have done on that dream. And I'm grateful for the work that we still have to do. And that we are the people doing it. And that we're not going to give up. We're not going to put down that load. But what we are going to do is shoulder it with each other. And spread it out. It's not too great of a burden to bear when we have each other. And then I'm going to release all of that and so much more, the highest and the best, into the presence that always says yes. And I'm going to do it with gratitude. And I'm grateful for this teaching that teaches me who I am. I am grateful for Emerson. I am grateful for our ministers, our practitioners. I'm grateful for this community. I'm grateful for each and every one of you. I am grateful for our musicians. And I'm grateful just because it feels amazing to be grateful. And I release my word with love into law, knowing it is so. And so it is.
Say with me now, something wonderful is happening through me.
Something wonderful is happening through me.
I feel it in my body.
I feel it in my body.
I feel it in my mind.
I feel it in my mind.
I feel it in everything I am.
I feel it in everything I am.
I choose it.
I choose it.
I trust it.
I trust it.
I use it.
I use it.
And I love it.
And I
And
love
so it is.
it. And so it is. Happy birthday to Mel T today.
Whoa!